When I was 2 years old, an exuberant Margaret Thatcher burst out of the Prime Minister's eminent residence onto Downing Street and waded into the press to address the nation with good news. She then uttered 5 words that would define the rest of her tenure and for some would lead to the decline of her power. She said, "We have become a grandmother." And while ordinarily such an announcement would generate celebration, her revelation bred to a state of public consternation because in the United Kingdom, no one but the monarch may use the pluralis majestatis, no one but the king or queen may use the royal we. And the practice known as gnosticism, from the Latin nos, meaning we, leads back to Queen Victoria, reportedly responding to a courtier's chauvinistic anecdote by saying, "We are not amused." And then all the way back to the 12th century, where Henrys and Richards would say "we" as a way to connect themselves with heaven, using the divine right of kings to buttress their utterances. But of course, in our tradition, the pluralis majestatis can be traced all the way back to creation and the very first chapter of recorded time. On the 6th day, once the stars and the sun and the moon and the seas and the fish and the fowl and the plants and the trees had all been conceived and fashioned, God says, Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu, let us make man in our image. Let us make man in our image. And in a monotheistic cosmos, absent a pantheon of dueling deities or divine allies, the Ibn Ezra cites a Gaon, a giant, for whom there remains only a single viable explanation. God is not speaking to anyone or inviting anyone to participate in creation, but uses the plural term, Shekain hu minhag hamalachim, because that is the practice of kings. But this is my question. Kings and queens of flesh and blood use the pluralis majestatis to bolster their authority, to prop up their claim to power. It is a practice shot through with pride, arrogance and vanity, egotism, narcissism and pomposity. It is a strategy employed by monarchs to remind their subjects of their God-given supremacy. So why on earth would an omnipotent, omniscient, confident God, modeling beneficence, benevolence, and sensitivity, need to speak in such a way? In a cosmos that bespeaks his ultimate sovereignty, a universe that emanates his uncontested hegemony, why would God even intimate that he has company? And for our greatest commentator, the answer is obvious. God is not using the pluralis majestatis or any other means of artificial grammatical self-elevation. He is in fact addressing an audience and speaking not of a royal but a real we. Lefisha Adam b'dmut malachim, since man would reflect the status of heaven's angels on earth, v'yitkanubo, and they would spawn envy. Lefikach nimlach behem, God consulted with them. So when God says for Rashi, let us make man, na'aseh Adam, he is speaking to another. He's speaking to the angels as equals and seeking their consent. Despite his absolute power, God deliberates with subordinates. He confabulates with his own creatures, and all this to deepen our appreciation of a vital trait. Anvan tunoto shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lamadnu mikan. It is here, right at the start for Rashi, that we learn of God's humility. In a world awaiting a creation that only one is remotely capable of initiating, God feigns an angelic consultation to teach people with power to confer. But a medieval mystic disagrees with Rashi and sees God's grammar not as a lesson in humility, but as a signal of the division between the rest of nature and humanity. It is Nachmanides who notes that while every other creature evolves or is molded out of existent matter alone, out of the elements and the chemicals sewn into the fabric of existence, humankind would be unique and have a soul blown from the Spirit of God. V'yitzer Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama, God formed man out of the dust of the earth, v'yipach ba'apav nishmat chayim, and blew a living soul into his nostrils. Human beings are the only creatures that are a composite of physical and spiritual material, a blend of dirt and ether. So when God says, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man, his we, speaks a collaboration with dust. In Nachmanides' words, Na'aseh Adam, when God says, let us make man, Shetotzi ha'aretz ha'guf, the earth would sprout the body, v'yiten hu yitbarach haruach, and God would provide the soul. But there is a fourth reading of this philological conundrum that sees God's we as neither royal nor meek nor revealing the unique ingredients of humanity, but it is heaven delineating our exceptional destiny. For of Moshe Teitelbaum of Ujel, where God says, let us make man na'aseh Adam, he is not speaking to himself or the angels or the earth, but to us. Amar na'aseh Adam, he says, let us make man, wrote Salama, meaning ani va'adam atzmo, me and humanity itself, al yedei shenenu, through the two of us together, Ye Adam, will humanity be made. When we are born, we are of course human, but we are not humane. We are of course Homo sapiens, but we are not moral agents or gentle teachers or leaders or healers. In Rav Teitelbaum's words, Be'emet, in truth, lo yeh begeder ha'adam be'et briato, we are not yet truly human when we are born. Lo yeh begeder adam, we are not yet truly human, alidei pu'ulat HaKadosh Baruch Hu levado, by means of God's work alone. Rak tzirav pu'ulat atzmo, we are required to participate in our own creation, b'bchirato, by means of our free will. Tigers are tigers, and snakes are snakes, and whales are whales based on their DNA. But human beings are incomplete and do not earn their name without choosing to do good. So, God, in the very first chapter of recorded time, before we as a species are even born, summons us to partner with him in our own creation, to see that our destiny requires our industry, that our greatness resides in our power to earn our name. So as we begin this year in the shadow of a season in which we confess our weakness and rely on God's pity, let us recognize our power as well. Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. Shavua Tov.